8 months after walking away from the Grand Nexus station, Ambassador Ryan Brooks returned to the same conference chamber. But this time, everything was different. The massive room that had once held representatives from hundreds of species now hosted only 50 delegates. Most alien governments had collapsed or were too weak to send representatives. The aliens who did attend looked nothing like the proud, arrogant beings who had dismissed humans as useful pets. The Zeltharian delegate was a minor official from one of 7 warlord states. The Corvani representative was a refugee administrator from their emergency government. The Nexus Alliance no longer existed to send anyone. Brooks walked to the center of the chamber and placed a document on the podium. The new Galactic Accords would reshape civilization across the galaxy. But unlike previous treaties, this one was not open for negotiation. The aliens would accept human terms or continue managing their collapse alone. Captain Jake Morrison stood beside Brooks, wearing the uniform of the new Human Mediation Corps. His sister Rachel had been right about alien psychology. The galaxy had learned that age did not equal wisdom. They had learned that technology did not equal capability. Most importantly, they had learned that humans possessed skills that no other species could replace. Admiral Helen Price's fleet waited in orbit around the station. The ships were not there as guests or partners. They were there as the new galactic peacekeeping force. Any species that wanted human protection would submit to human authority. Any government that wanted human aid would accept human oversight. The first article of the new Accords established human diplomatic immunity throughout the galaxy. No alien government could arrest, detain, or prosecute any human citizen for any reason. Humans would be subject only to human law regardless of where they served in the galaxy. The second article granted complete autonomy to all human colonies and installations. Human territories would be governed by human law under human authority. Alien governments would have no jurisdiction over any human settlement or facility. But the third article was the most revolutionary. Any species requesting human assistance would acknowledge human authority in all matters related to that assistance. If aliens wanted human peacekeepers, those peacekeepers would have complete authority over security decisions. If they wanted human mediators, those mediators would have final say in all negotiations. Brooks read each article aloud to the assembled delegates. There were no questions or objections. The aliens had learned what happened when they rejected human involvement. They had seen their civilizations crumble without human support. They would not make that mistake again. The transformation was remarkable. Counselor Vexithara, the Zeltharian who had called humans useful pets, was not present. His warlord state had been destroyed by rivals 3 months ago. The aliens who sat in the chamber now had witnessed the collapse of everything their ancestors had built. Chancellor Morthek of the reformed Corvani Federation was the first to sign the Accords. His people had lost over half their population to plague and war. His government controlled only 3 star systems from an empire that had once spanned 50 worlds. The Corvani Federation accepts human authority, he said formally. We acknowledge that human wisdom exceeds our own. We submit to human judgment in all matters of governance and policy. It was exactly what humans had never wanted to hear. Brooks felt no satisfaction in the aliens' submission. Humanity had wanted partnership, not dominance. They had wanted respect, not worship. But the galaxy had proven incapable of treating humans as equals. They only understood hierarchy, and now humans sat at the top of that hierarchy. The Andorian Republic's representative signed next. Unlike the others, Chancellor Vexthul had been humanity's friend before the crisis. His signature carried different weight because it came from genuine gratitude rather than desperate submission. The Andorian Republic thanks our human friends for their mercy, he said quietly. We never forgot that humans were our partners. We hope that partnership can be restored, even under these new terms. Brooks nodded respectfully. The Androians would receive special consideration in the new order. Friends who had remained loyal during the crisis would be treated differently from those who had shown nothing but contempt for humanity. One by one, the surviving alien governments signed the Accords. Each signature represented the surrender of their independence to human authority. Each delegate acknowledged that their species could not govern themselves without human supervision. Captain Morrison watched the ceremony with mixed emotions. He had started this crisis by walking out of failed peace talks. Now he was witnessing the birth of a new galactic order with humanity as the unquestioned leaders. It was not what he had wanted, but it was what the galaxy had forced upon itself. The new Human Mediation Corps would have unprecedented authority throughout known space. Human mediators could override local governments, impose economic sanctions, and authorize military intervention. No alien decision could be made without human approval, in any matter that affected interspecies relations. Admiral Price's fleet would become the new Galactic Defense Force under exclusive human command. Human military bases would be established in every major star system. Alien military forces would be reduced to local police units with no authority beyond their homeworlds. The economic provisions were equally comprehensive. All interstellar trade would be managed through human banking systems. All shipping routes would be protected by human patrol fleets. All resource extraction would be overseen by human administrators to prevent the conflicts that had torn the galaxy apart. Brooks concluded the ceremony with words that would echo through galactic history. The age of equality has ended because you proved yourselves incapable of equality. The age of human leadership begins today, not because we sought power, but because you demonstrated your need for our guidance. He paused and looked around the chamber at the defeated alien delegates. We did not want to rule you. We wanted to work with you. You have chosen this outcome through your own actions and attitudes. We accept the responsibility you have forced upon us. The signing ceremony concluded with formal recognition of human authority by all surviving alien governments. Species that had once commanded vast empires now served as junior partners in a human-dominated galactic order. President Martha Lewis addressed the galaxy from the Oval Office that evening. Her speech was broadcast to every world that still maintained communication systems. Billions of aliens listened as she explained the new reality. For 8 months, you have lived without human involvement in your affairs, she said. You have seen what your civilizations become without human mediation, human innovation, and human leadership. The choice before you is simple: accept our authority or continue your decline alone. She outlined the benefits of the new system. Human peacekeepers would end the wars that were destroying entire sectors. Human doctors would stop the plagues that were killing billions. Human engineers would rebuild the infrastructure that had collapsed. Human administrators would restore the trade networks that had kept civilizations functioning. But these services came with a price. Alien independence was over. Species that wanted human help would submit to human authority. Governments that wanted human protection would accept human oversight. The galaxy would have peace and prosperity, but it would be human peace under human leadership. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every surviving alien government formally requested human assistance. They offered their territories, their resources, and their populations to human administration. The same beings who had called humans pets now begged to serve under human authority. Captain Morrison established the first Human Mediation Corps office on the Grand Nexus Station. The facility that had once hosted failed peace talks between equals now served as the headquarters for human oversight of galactic civilization. His first official act was to end the 17 wars that were ravaging known space. Human mediation, teams deployed to conflict zones with absolute authority to impose ceasefires. Alien military commanders who refused to comply faced immediate intervention by human forces. Within 60 days, the shooting had stopped across the galaxy. For the first time in 8 months, refugees could return to their homes. Children could attend schools without fear of bombardment. Farmers could plant crops without worrying about armies destroying their fields. The galaxy was learning to live under human authority. It was not the partnership that humanity had originally wanted, but it was the only system that worked. The aliens had proven themselves incapable of self-governance. They had demonstrated their need for human wisdom and human leadership. Ambassador Brooks returned to Earth after establishing the new galactic order. He had served humanity faithfully for decades, first as a diplomat seeking equality, and finally as the architect of human dominance. His last official report summarized the transformation. The galaxy demanded hierarchy, he wrote. They insisted on treating some species as superior to others. They have achieved the hierarchy they wanted, but not in the way they expected. Humanity now stands. Commander Jake Morrison walked into the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. Around him, hundreds of alien beings sat in tall chairs that reached toward the ceiling. The air smelled different here. It always did when so many species gathered in one place. Jake had been to this hall many times before. He had stood here when the Council needed human help to stop wars. He had spoken here when plagues threatened to kill millions. Today felt different. Today, he knew, would be the last time he ever walked through these doors. Captain Lisa Hayes stood behind him with the other human officers. She watched Jake's back as he moved toward the center of the room. Lisa had served with Jake for 15 years. She knew him well enough to see that he was angry, even though his face showed nothing. The council president, a tall blue creature called Zarmoth, raised one of his 4 arms. The noise in the hall stopped. Every eye, whether round or square, or triangle-shaped, looked at Jake. "Commander Morrison," Zarmoth said. His voice came out in clicks and whistles, but the translator in Jake's ear turned it into English. "The council has made its decision about humanity's place in our organization." Jake said nothing. He waited. Zarmoth continued. "We have voted. The result is clear. Humanity can no longer be part of the Galactic Council. Your species has been found too dangerous for continued membership." A small sound came from the human section. Lisa turned to see one of the younger officers clench his fists. She put a hand on his arm to keep him still. Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrians stood up. His snake-like body curved as he spoke. "Humans solve every problem with violence. They call it peacekeeping, but we know better. They are warmongers who bring conflict wherever they go." Jake almost smiled at that. The Zephyrians had been in a civil war for 50 years before humans arrived. Human diplomats had ended that war in 6 months. Now Veltar called them warmongers. The Nexari representative rose next. Its crystal body caught the light and threw rainbow colors across the wall. "Humans act without thinking. They make decisions based on feelings instead of logic. This primitive behavior threatens the stability of our galaxy." More aliens stood to speak against humanity. The Corvin delegate talked about human interference in their politics. He did not mention that human interference had saved his homeworld from a plague that would have killed everyone on it. The Thessian coalition speaker complained about human aggression. She forgot to say that human soldiers had died protecting Thessian colonies from pirates. Jake listened to them all. Each species that spoke against humanity owed their lives to human actions. The mantid hives had been saved from starvation by human engineers who fixed their food production systems. The Alterian Republic existed because human negotiators had prevented them from destroying themselves in a nuclear war. Now these same species voted to throw humanity out of the council they had helped build. When the speeches ended, Zarmoth looked at Jake. "Do you have anything to say before we make this decision final?" Jake stepped forward. The hall became very quiet. Even the air recycling system seemed to make less noise. 300 years ago, Jake said, humanity joined this council because we believed in peace. We believed that different species could work together to make the galaxy better. His voice was calm, but everyone could hear the steel in it. Since that day, we have served you faithfully. We have stopped 47 wars. We have prevented 12 genocides. We have saved over 200 billion lives across 93 worlds. Jake paused and looked around the hall. Many of the aliens would not meet his eyes. "We have asked for nothing in return except the chance to help. We have bled for you. We have died for you. We have given you our best technology, our brightest minds, our strongest warriors." The hall remained silent. "But today you tell us we are too dangerous. You say we are too violent, too primitive, too emotional to be trusted with galactic peace." Jake's voice got harder. "Very well. If that is what you believe, then humanity will no longer burden you with our presence. As of this moment, we formally Withdraw from all council territories and agreements. We will return to Earth and leave you to govern yourselves as you see fit. A sound like wind through leaves came from the alien delegates. It was the sound of fear beginning to grow. All human peacekeeping forces will return to human space within 30 days. All human diplomatic missions will close. All human trade agreements are ended. All human medical assistance programs will stop. All human protection services will cease. The sound grew louder. Some of the aliens started talking to each other in quick, worried voices. We came to you in friendship, Jake said. We served you with honor. We bled for your peace and died for your freedom. Today you have chosen to throw that all away. He turned to face the human section. All human personnel will prepare for immediate departure. We go home. Lisa Hayes and the other officers stood up. They moved with perfect order toward the exits. Not one of them looked back at the aliens who had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Jake was the last to leave. At the door, he turned around one more time. Good luck, he said. You are going to need it. Then he was gone, and the great hall erupted into chaos. The first attack came 8 hours after Jake Morrison left the council hall. Captain Roy Phillips was leading the last human patrol through the Vegan trade routes when his scanner picked up 15 pirate ships moving toward a mantid cargo fleet. Roy had been protecting these shipping lanes for 6 years. He knew every asteroid, every space station, every safe harbor in this part of the galaxy. The pirates knew him too. They had learned to stay away when human ships were around, but now word was spreading fast through the criminal networks. The humans were leaving. The galaxy's best fighters were going home. Roy's communication system buzzed. The mantid ship captain was calling for help. Human vessel, we are under attack. Please assist us. Roy looked at his orders. All human forces were to return to Earth immediately. No exceptions, no delays. The council had made their choice. He switched on his communicator. Mantid vessel, this is Captain Phillips. I am sorry, but we are no longer authorized to operate in council space. Contact council security for assistance. The mantid captain's voice cracked with fear. But they will take 4 hours to reach us. We will be dead by then. Roy closed his eyes. He had saved thousands of ships over the years. Now he had to watch them die. I am truly sorry, he said, and ordered his ships to jump to hyperspace. Behind them, the mantid cargo fleet burned. 3 days later, the news reached the council. The Vegan trade routes, protected by human forces for 200 years, were now controlled by pirates. 3 major shipping companies had already stopped sending ships through the area. Ambassador Krethak of the Mantid Hives stood in the emergency council session. His 6 arms shook with anger and fear. In 3 days, we have lost more ships than in the previous 3 years combined. Our economy is collapsing. Council President Zarmoth tried to look calm. The situation is temporary. Our security forces will adapt quickly. Adapt to what? Krethak demanded. The pirates know we are weak without human protection. They are gathering larger fleets. Soon they will attack our homeworlds directly, on the other side of the galaxy. Ben Clark was packing the last human belongings on New Babylon. He had been the colonial administrator here for 12 years. The world had been a desert when humans arrived. Now it had green fields and flowing rivers. The local Zerion people stood at the spaceport fence watching the humans load their ships. Their leader, an old creature named Tethavar, had tears running down his scaled face. Please do not leave us, Tethavar said through the translator. Without your farming knowledge, we will starve within a year. Ben wanted to stay. These people had become his friends. Their children played with human children in the same schools. But the orders were clear. All humans had to leave council space. I have left detailed instructions for your agricultural systems, Ben said. Your people are smart. You will learn. But even as he said it, Ben knew it was not true. The Zerians were good at many things, but they could not think like humans. They could not look at a failing crop and know exactly what was wrong just by seeing how the leaves curled. They could not feel when the soil needed water or nutrients. The human transport ships lifted off, leaving behind fields that would be dead within months. On Nexus Station, Dr. Amy Rodriguez was shutting down the Galactic Disease Control Center. This facility had been humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. It had prevented 17 pandemic outbreaks in 10 years. The massive computers held cures for diseases that had killed billions. Her assistant, Dr. Keltar of the Vorthan Republic, watched her pack the human-designed medical scanners. "Amy, surely you can leave some of your people here. The medical knowledge you possess is irreplaceable." Amy shook her head. The council was very clear. Humans are too dangerous to remain in galactic society. That includes our doctors. But, without human intuition, we cannot predict how diseases will mutate. Your people see patterns that escape our logic. Amy handed him a data pad. This contains all our research. Every cure, every treatment, every prevention method we have developed. Your people will have to make it work. Dr. Keltar looked at the device with despair. The information was all there, but information was not understanding. Humans had a gift for seeing connections that other species missed. They could look at a sick patient and know what was wrong before any test confirmed it. They could predict which way a disease would spread by understanding how people behaved when they were afraid. Without that gift, the galaxy's medical defenses were crippled. The first new crisis came exactly 1 week after the last human peacekeepers left the Kythera system. The two sides in the civil war there had been kept apart by human forces for 5 years. The peace treaty had been written by human diplomats who understood both cultures, but the humans were gone now, and old hatreds boiled over. General Vexhan of the Northern Alliance looked at his war map. The human peacekeepers who used to patrol the border were gone. Nothing stood between him and his ancient enemies in the Southern Coalition. He gave the order to attack. The Southern Coalition fought back. Within hours, the war that had been frozen for 5 years exploded across 3 star systems. Both sides used weapons they had never dared use while humans were watching. Cities burned. Millions died. The Council's new peacekeeping force arrived too late. They found planets in ruins and populations fleeing in terror. Without human leadership, they had no idea how to stop the violence. On Earth, President Susan Foster read the reports coming from across the galaxy. Trade routes under attack, colonies starving, wars starting, medical crises spreading, economic systems failing. She felt sad for the people who were suffering, but not surprised. Humans had been holding the galaxy together for 3 centuries. The other species had grown used to human solutions to their problems. They had forgotten how to solve anything difficult on their own. "Madam President," her aide said, "the Australian evacuation fleet has just jumped into the Sol system. That is the last one. All humans are now back in human space." Susan nodded. Around Earth's orbit, thousands of ships carried refugees from every corner of the galaxy. Human families who had lived on alien worlds for generations. Human workers who had built cities on distant planets. Human soldiers who had kept peace in places where peace seemed impossible. All of them were coming home. "Send a message to all fleet commanders," Susan said. "Welcome them back. Tell them that humanity's greatest adventure is just beginning." Fleet Admiral Tony Martinez stood on the bridge of his flagship as it approached the Sol system. Behind him, 300 ships carried the last humans from the Outer Rim territories. These were people who had never seen Earth, children born on alien worlds, families whose roots went back 5 generations in space. Through the view screen, Tony could see Earth growing larger. The blue and green world looked peaceful after months of watching the galaxy tear itself apart. But even from here, he could see the massive construction projects in orbit. Humanity was not just coming home. They were building something new. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "we are receiving a priority message from Galactic Command. The Draconian hegemony has declared war on the Celestial Federation." Tony closed his eyes. The Draconians and the Federation had been enemies for 1,000 years before humans arrived. Human diplomats had kept them from fighting for 3 centuries. Now, with humans gone, the old hatreds were coming back. "How long since we left the border zone?" Tony asked. 72 hours, sir." 72 hours. That was how long peace had lasted without human intervention. The war began with a single shot. Commander Velthak of the Draconian 4th Fleet fired on a Federation patrol ship near the Rigel sector. He told his crew that the Federation vessel had crossed into Draconian space, but everyone knew the truth. The Draconians wanted war, and now there were no humans to stop them. The Federation responded by destroying a Draconian mining station. The Draconians hit a Federation colony world. Within days, 17 star systems were burning with conflict. Council President Zarmoth called an emergency meeting. The Great Hall was full of panicked voices. Every species was demanding action, but no one knew what to do. "Send our peacekeeping forces," demanded Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrians. "To do what?" replied the Corvan delegate. "They do not know how to make peace between species that have hated each other for centuries." That was human magic. General Kothran of the Council military admitted the truth that everyone knew, but no one wanted to say. Our forces were trained to follow human commanders. Without human leadership, they are just soldiers with no idea how to stop a war. On Epsilon Centauri, Chief Engineer Kate Wilson was checking the atmospheric processing systems one last time before leaving. This terraforming project fed 8 billion people across 12 worlds. The massive machines had been designed by human engineers who understood how to make dead planets come alive. Kate's replacement was a logical Andromedan named Tech Leader Zenthar. He was very smart and knew everything about engineering theory, but Kate could see the worry in his large silver eyes. "The pressure readings in Section 7 are unstable," Zenthar said. "The computer says everything is working correctly, but the numbers do not feel right." Kate smiled sadly. "That is the problem. The machines work on more than just programming. They need someone who can feel when something is wrong, even when the computers say everything is fine." She showed him the control room where she had spent 12 years keeping the planet alive. "These systems need constant small adjustments, not because they are broken, but because planets are living things. The atmosphere changes every day. The soil chemistry shifts with the seasons. You have to think like the planet thinks." Zenthar studied the controls with his analytical mind. "But how can I know what the planet is thinking? I do not understand this concept." "That is why the system will fail," Kate said quietly. "Not because you are not smart enough, but because you think like a computer. Planets need engineers who think like artists." 6 months later, Kate's prediction came true. The atmospheric processors on Epsilon Centauri began producing toxic gases instead of breathable air. Zenthar followed every manual, ran every diagnostic test, but he could not see what the machines needed. Without human intuition to guide them, the systems that fed billions slowly died. In the Galactic Banking Consortium headquarters, Director Ewar Nathan Torres was transferring control to his replacement, a mathematical genius from the Centauri Collective. The Centaurian, designated Unit Prime 7749, could calculate market trends with perfect accuracy. "The key to galactic economics," Nathan explained, "is not math. It is understanding why people do stupid things with their money." Unit Prime 7749 processed this information. "Explained stupid things. Economic behavior should be logical." Nathan laughed. "That is exactly the problem. People are not logical. They buy when they should sell. They panic when they should stay calm. They make decisions based on fear, hope, greed, and love. You can predict markets perfectly if you understand that people will always do the most emotional thing possible." "This does not compute," Unit Prime 7749 replied. "Emotional decisions are inefficient." "Yes," Nathan said, packing his personal items, "but they are also inevitable. Without human understanding of market psychology, the galactic economy began to swing wildly between boom and crash. Entire planetary governments fell as their economic systems collapsed under the weight of pure logic applied to illogical beings. Judge Henry Adams was the last human serving in the Galactic Court of Justice. He had spent 20 years resolving disputes that other species found impossible. His replacement was Judge Call then, a supremely logical Vularian who believed that justice was simply a matter of applying rules correctly. Henry's final case involved a trade dispute between two merchant families who had been fighting for 3 generations. The law was clear about who was right, but Henry knew that following the law would cause a blood feud that would last another 3 generations. Instead, he crafted a solution that gave both families what they needed while making them think they had won. It was not perfectly legal, but it was perfectly human. "I do not understand your ruling," Judge Call then said after reading Henry's decision. "The law clearly states that family Corthan should receive all disputed property." "The law is not always the same thing as justice," Henry replied. "Sometimes you have to bend the rules to find the right answer. But if judges do not follow the law exactly, the system becomes chaotic." Henry gathered his robes and prepared to leave. "Judge Call, then, you are about to learn that following rules perfectly is not the same thing as solving problems correctly." When Henry left, the galactic court system ground to a halt. Cases that required flexibility and creative thinking piled up for years. Judge Call then followed every rule perfectly, but his perfect legal decisions created more problems than they solved. On Earth, President Susan Foster watched the reports from across the galaxy. Everywhere humans had left, systems were failing. Not because the aliens were stupid, but because they thought differently than humans did. "The Australian engineering teams have finished the new orbital shipyards," her aide reported. "The Canadian agricultural program has increased Earth's food production by 300%. The European research institutes have made breakthroughs in faster-than-light travel." Susan nodded. Humanity was not just surviving without the galaxy. They were thriving. All the energy and creativity that had been spent solving other species' problems was now focused on advancing human civilization. "Any word from the Council?" she asked. "Nothing official, but our intelligence services report increasing chaos throughout Council space. Some sources suggest they may be preparing a diplomatic mission to Earth." Susan looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning what life was like without human help. She felt sorry for them, but not sorry enough to go back to being their servants. "Let them come," she said. "When they do, they will find that humanity has grown beyond their need for our old masters." Council President Zarmoth had not slept in 3 days. The emergency reports kept coming, each one worse than the last. He stood in his private office looking out at the Council Station's main plaza, where refugees from 17 different wars crowded around aid stations that had no aid to give. 6 months ago, he had been proud to lead the vote that expelled humanity from the Council. The humans had become too powerful, too influential. Other species were starting to copy human ways of thinking instead of following their own ancient traditions. Something had to be done. Now Zarmoth wondered if anything would be left of galactic civilization by the time this nightmare ended. His aide, a nervous Thessian named Pektar, entered with another stack of crisis reports. "Mr. President, the Corvan Civil War has entered its 4th phase. The death toll has reached 2 billion. Zarmoth took the report but did not read it. He knew what it would say. The same thing every report said. The fighting had spiraled beyond all control because no one knew how to stop it. The Corvan Empire had been at peace for 40 years. Human mediators had ended their civil war by creating a power-sharing agreement that seemed impossible. Both sides got what they needed without either side feeling defeated, but the humans were gone now, and the old hatreds had returned like a disease. The northern clans remembered every insult from the southern houses. The southern houses had not forgotten any betrayal by the northern clans. Without human peacekeepers to keep them apart and human diplomats to remind them why peace was better than war, they had returned to killing each other. "What about our mediation team?" Zarmoth asked. "They failed, sir. Both sides rejected the Council's peace terms. The Corvan leaders said our negotiators do not understand their culture well enough to create a lasting solution." Zarmoth knew why the mediation had failed. Iraye, Council's diplomatic corps had been trained to support human mediators, not replace them. They could arrange meetings and write agreements, But they could not do the impossible thing that humans did. They could not make enemies see each other as people instead of targets. The communication system buzzed with an urgent call. Zarmath activated the hologram, and the image of Dr. Zethara appeared. The Medical Assembly's chief researcher looked exhausted. President Zarmath, the plague on Rigel 7 has spread to 6 more systems. We need to evacuate 12 billion people immediately. What about the containment protocols? Zarmath asked. We have the human medical data. Dr. Zethara's tentacles writhed with frustration. We have their data, but we do not have their insight. The human protocols assume a level of medical intuition that we simply do not possess. Dr. Amy Rodriguez could look at a patient and know instantly how the disease would progress. She could predict mutations before they happened. We can only follow the written procedures, and the disease is changing faster than our procedures can adapt. Zarmath ended the call and looked at another report. The Outer Rim trade routes were now completely controlled by pirates. The criminal fleets had grown bold enough to attack military convoys. They knew that without human tactical genius, Council forces could not predict their movements or counter their strategies. Captain Rex Murphy had been the most feared pirate hunter in the galaxy. His human strike teams had kept the trade routes safe for decades. Rex understood criminal psychology in ways that logical species could not match. He knew that pirates were not just greedy. They were angry, desperate, proud, and afraid. By understanding their emotions, he could predict their actions and stop them before they struck. The Council's new anti-piracy force was led by Commander Vorthak, a brilliant tactical computer from the Synthetic Collective. Vorthak could calculate the optimal response to any pirate attack with mathematical precision. But he could not understand why pirates made choices that were tactically stupid but emotionally satisfying. He could not predict that a desperate criminal would attack a heavily defended convoy just to prove he was brave. The pirates were winning because they were irrational, and the Council forces could only fight rational opponents. Another report came in from the frontier. The terraforming project on Epsilon Centauri had completely collapsed. The atmosphere was becoming toxic and 8 billion people were going to die unless they could be evacuated within months. Do we have enough transport ships? Zarmath asked. No, sir, Pektar replied. And even if we did, where would we take them? Every habitable world is dealing with its own crisis. Zarmath set down the report and walked to his window. In the plaza below, he could see representatives from dozens of species arguing with Council officials. They were all demanding help that the Council could not provide. The mantid hives faced economic collapse because their trade routes were controlled by pirates. The Xerion colonies were starving because their agricultural systems were failing, without human farmers. The Vorthan Republic was fighting 3 different rebel groups because their government had lost legitimacy, without human political advisors to help them understand what their people actually wanted. Every problem had the same cause. The species that had voted to expel humanity had grown dependent on human solutions without realizing it. For 3 centuries, humans had been the galaxy's problem solvers, and now the galaxy had forgotten how to solve its own problems. Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrians entered the office without being announced. His snake-like body was coiled with tension. Zarmath, my homeworld is in rebellion. The people say that our government is incompetent because we cannot stop the chaos that is consuming the galaxy. Your people voted to support expelling the humans, Zarmath reminded him. Because you convinced us that humans were dangerous warmongers who caused more problems than they solved. You said we would be better off without their interference. Zarmath wanted to argue, but the words died in his throat. Every species in the Council had believed that humans were holding them back from reaching their full potential. They had imagined that without human influence, the galaxy would become more peaceful, more logical, more efficient. Instead, they had learned that humans were not the source of the galaxy's problems. Humans were the solution to problems that other species could not even see. What do you suggest? Zarmath asked. Send a mission to Earth, ask them to return. The humans will never trust us again. We betrayed them after centuries of loyal service. Veltar uncoiled himself and looked directly at Zarmoth. Then we offer them whatever they want. Full leadership of the Council, control of all peacekeeping forces, unlimited resources for their projects. We make them partners instead of servants. The other species will never agree to human leadership. They will when their worlds finish burning. As if to prove his point, the communication system activated with 3 more emergency calls. The Andromedan sector was under pirate attack. The Centauri Collective had declared economic war on the outer colonies. A plague ship had been spotted heading toward the Nexari home system. Zarmoth looked at the reports and made his decision. Assemble a diplomatic mission. Include representatives from every species that has lost worlds to the chaos. Make sure they understand what we are asking for, which is forgiveness and help, in that order. Pektar activated his communicator to begin assembling the mission. As he worked, he asked a question that had been bothering him for months. Sir, why do you think humans were so good at solving our problems? Zarmoth thought about all the reports he had read, all the crises that humans had prevented, all the solutions that had seemed impossible until humans made them work. Because they do not think like us, he said finally. We see problems and look for logical solutions. Humans see problems and ask what people need to be happy. Logic tells you what should work. Understanding people tells you what will actually work. Will they help us again? Zarmoth looked out at the plaza where thousands of refugees waited for help that might never come. I do not know, but if they do not, the galactic civilization we have spent 10,000 years building will be gone within a decade.